Commander Ryan Hale was not the kind of man who startled easily. He had fought in asteroid sieges, led boarding operations against pirate fleets, and survived 3 hyperspace collapses. But even he froze when the door of his small recovery room slid open without warning. The figure who stepped inside was a woman, tall, confident, and carrying an aura of danger that filled the entire room. Her skin was covered only by thin medical stabilizer patches and glowing biomonitors, the standard emergency gear worn after a person had been pulled out of an overheated exosuit. She was, in every practical way, unarmored and exposed. In Terran military slang, this state was called walking in naked. She didn't seem embarrassed, not even slightly. She walked with quiet determination, her feet steady despite the faint tremble in her limbs. She looked like someone who had survived something terrible and wasn't planning to collapse anytime soon. Her dark hair fell loosely across her shoulders, still damp from cryocoolant. A long scar ran across her left collarbone, old, healed, and a sign of the battles she had seen. She stopped near his bedside. Then she smiled, confident, unapologetic, and strangely calm considering they were both half-broken survivors on a ship barely holding itself together. "This bed is mine," she said plainly. "By survival protocol." Ryan blinked once, trying to process both her statement and the fact that she had simply barged into his room. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," she replied. She wasn't rude, but she spoke as if she was stating an obvious fact. "I need the med bed. My augmentation core is unstable. Without regeneration support, I won't last more than 3 hours." He stared at her for a moment. Ryan was injured, bruised, and still recovering from the blast that had thrown him across a collapsing corridor. His ribs ached, and the gash along his arm pulsed with a heat that made him dizzy. He had every right to keep the bed, but she didn't look like she was lying. "What's your name?" he asked. "Saris," she answered. "Combat Specialist, Terran Vanguard Division." A Vanguard? He had only ever heard stories about them. Genetically stabilized humans with quantum tether augmentations, capable of surviving weapons that turned normal soldiers to ash. They were rare, expensive, and extremely important, but also unstable if damaged. He studied her face. She was pale, too pale. The faint glow beneath her skin, the light of her augmentation core, flickered unevenly. "How long have you been active since extraction?" he asked. "Too long," Saris admitted. "My core overheated when I dragged you out of the collapsing hallway. The medbot sealed me in a stabilizer suit, but it wasn't enough." A memory surfaced. Bright fire, metal exploding inward, smoke choking the air. He remembered falling. A pair of strong arms lifting him, a voice telling him to hold on. That voice had been hers. "You saved me," Ryan said quietly. She shrugged. Orders and instinct. Ryan exhaled slowly. He respected people who followed orders under pressure. He respected people who didn't hesitate when lives depended on them. But most of all, he respected honesty, and Saris, despite her rough approach, seemed painfully honest. Still, he wasn't ready to give up his bed. "Protocol or not," he said, "I'm badly injured." "I need this bed too." Saris tilted her head slightly, the lights along her neck dimming then flickering back on. "Your injuries are physical, painful, yes, but stable. Mine are structural. If my core collapses, it won't just kill me. It will tear a hole in the med bay." Ryan froze. "A microfold implosion?" "Yes." He rubbed his eyes. That wasn't something he could ignore. He didn't want to die, and he certainly didn't want anyone else on the ship to die either. But something still bothered him. How she had spoken about saving him. "Why did you pull me out?" he asked. "You could have escaped alone." "Because we're human," she answered simply, "and humans don't leave their own behind. HFY, humanity, fi." "Yeah." It was a phrase spoken with pride by Terrans across the galaxy. Humanity was small compared to most starfaring species, but they were stubborn, loyal, unbreakable, and they survived because they stood together. Ryan felt that truth in her words, but he also felt the pain in his ribs. He needed a compromise. "Look," he said calmly, "I understand your condition, but this is my bed. I'm assigned to this room. You can't just walk in and—" The ship suddenly shook, cutting him off. A deep rumble traveled through the walls like a distant thunder. The lights flickered once. Saris tensed instantly. "That wasn't normal," she said. "Damage from the colony attack?" Ryan asked. She shook her head. "No, that was external. A gravitational distortion wave." He sat up despite his aching ribs. "They're tracking us?" Saris hesitated, just for a moment. Then she spoke in a quieter voice. "They weren't attacking the colony," she said. "They were after me." Ryan stared at her. She continued. "The enemy wanted my augmentation core. They wanted the quantum seed inside it. That's why they hit the colony. They wanted me captured." "You didn't mention this earlier," Ryan said sharply. "There wasn't time." He studied her expression. She wasn't proud. She wasn't defiant. She was worried. Not for herself, but for the ship. "How unstable is your core right now?" he asked. "Very." "How dangerous?" Saris met his eyes. "If I lose control, this ship goes with me." Silence filled the room. She needed the med bed. That much was clear, but he needed it too. Rian exhaled slowly, thinking. He wasn't a man who made decisions lightly, but he also wasn't the type to refuse help to someone who had saved his life and who could save the ship if stabilized. He shifted slightly and winced. His side burned. He didn't have much strength left. "What do you suggest?" he asked. Saris looked at him, her expression softening slightly, though her voice remained steady. "I'm asking for your trust. For a few hours. Enough time for the regeneration cycle to stabilize my core." A few hours. Rian considered that. He could survive his injuries for a few hours. It would hurt. It would be miserable. But he would live. The ship, on the other hand, might not survive if her core destabilized. He sighed, deeply. "You really plan to claim my bed?" he asked. "Yes," she said unapologetically, "because it's the only option we have." He couldn't argue with that logic, but he wouldn't surrender completely. "In that case," he said slowly, "we share it." Saris blinked. "Share?" "Not at the same time," he clarified quickly. "Alternating cycles. You get the regeneration field for 30 minutes, then me, then you again, then me. We split it until we're both stable." Saris considered this, tapping lightly on one of the glowing lines on her arm as if checking her internal readouts. "That could work," she admitted. "It's not efficient, but it's possible." "So we have a deal?" Ryan asked. She looked at him with a new kind of respect, quiet, genuine, and free of the cold authority she had walked in with. "Yes," she said, "we have a deal." The med bed chimed as if agreeing with them. Ryan leaned back slowly, relief washing over him. His ribs throbbed, but at least the situation was under control, for the moment. Saris stepped closer, her expression more relaxed now. "Commander Hale," she said, "you made the right choice." Ryan smirked, despite his pain. "I usually do." She actually laughed, a short, tired laugh, but real. "Good," she said, "because humanity needs people who make the right choices if we're going to survive what's coming." Rian's eyes narrowed. "What is coming?" Saris looked at the walls as if she could see through them into the dark space beyond. "Something ancient," she said, "something patient, and something that wants what humans have finally built." Her voice lowered. "A war unlike any we've faced." Ryan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach, and he knew. This woman walking into his room, naked, claiming his bed, and nearly collapsing in front of him was just the beginning. The real danger was still out there, and it was coming for all of them. The med bay lights flickered again, but this time the tremor passing through the ship was stronger. Commander Ryan Hale felt the vibration travel through the bed frame and up his spine. Something outside was hunting them, and he suspected he now understood exactly what. Sarah stood near the room's entrance, her posture steady, but her face pale. She placed her hand against the bulkhead as if she could sense what was happening beyond the walls. The thin stabilizer patches on her skin glowed faintly in response to her changing vitals. Ryan watched her carefully. Even injured, even exhausted, the Vanguard soldier looked like someone built for survival. But the flickering lights under her skin told a different story. Her augmentation core was unstable. It was only a matter of time before it reached a critical point. "We need to activate the shared cycle protocol," Sarah said finally. "The ship can't risk my core failing." Ryan nodded, pushing himself upright despite the sharp pain in his ribs. "Then let's start." She approached the medbed with cautious steps. The room felt strangely quiet, like the ship itself was holding its breath. Ryan slid to the side of the bed, letting her sit at the edge first. He watched as she placed her hand on the control panel. A soft hum filled the room. The regeneration field lit up beneath the mattress, washing the room in a pale blue glow. Saris lay back slowly, her expression softening as the stabilizing energy wrapped around her. The lights under her skin brightened, becoming more steady. For a moment, Ryan simply observed. He had never seen a Vanguard so closely before. There were only a few hundred across the entire human expansion. They were powerful, but also fragile in ways most people didn't understand. Their bodies were built to carry quantum seed cores, devices more powerful than any engine humanity had ever created. But the price was constant maintenance, constant balance. One wrong shift, one overload, one moment of instability, and disaster followed. Ryan leaned against the wall, trying not to think about how a failure could tear a hole through the ship. "How long until your first cycle finishes?" he asked. 30 minutes, Saris replied quietly. "Then you take over." Ryan nodded. "Good." Silence settled again, not uncomfortable, just tense. The ship groaned once more. The distortion wave must have hit the rear hull this time, because the lights dimmed for a full 2 seconds before returning. Ryan frowned. "They're close." Saris opened her eyes. "Yes." "You said they want your core," Ryan continued. "But why? What does that quantum seed actually do?" She hesitated. Ryan could see it. Her jaw tightened just slightly, and she looked away for a moment as if she wasn't sure how much she should reveal. But then she spoke. "The quantum seed is a key," she said, "a key to stable microfold travel." Ryan blinked. "But microfold travel is unstable. That's why we banned it." "Exactly," she replied. "But the seed changes that. It can stabilize the fold, create safe tunnels through subspace." Ryan's eyes widened. "That would change everything. Humans could reach new systems in days." "Hours," Saris corrected softly. "And the enemy knows this. If they steal it, they can reach every human colony before we even realize they're coming." Ryan felt a chill crawl through his chest. "So they attacked the colony because you were there?" "Yes." "And they're not going to stop?" "No," Saris said. "They won't. They'll keep chasing me until they get the seed." Ryan exhaled slowly. "Then we're in trouble." Saris gave a small, tired smile. "You're surprisingly calm." "Calm doesn't mean I like it," Ryan said under his breath. She chuckled weakly. For several minutes, neither spoke again. The hum of the regeneration field filled the room, steady and rhythmic. Ryan watched as the color returned to Saris's face, and the flickering lights beneath her skin began to form a stable pattern. The first cycle was almost complete, but the peace didn't last. A sudden alarm blared through the room. The lights turned red. The bed's holographic screen lit up with a warning. "Incoming gravitational spike! Impact imminent!" Ryan straightened immediately. "What now?" Saris sat up with effort, gripping the edge of the bed. "They're locking onto our location. A gravitational spike like this means they're preparing a jump point snare." Ryan swore under his breath. "A snare? That could tear the ship apart." Saris nodded grimly. "Exactly." The ship lurched violently. Rian lost his balance and had to grip the wall rail to stay upright. Saris nearly fell off the bed but caught herself just in time. Rian moved toward her. "Are you all right?" "I'm stable enough," she answered, but he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The medbay intercom crackled to life. "All crew report to emergency stations. Jump fold instability detected. Prepare for emergency shielding." Ryan clenched his jaw. They couldn't fight without knowing what they were facing, and he doubted they had enough firepower to handle whatever force was chasing a vanguard. He turned to Saris. "You said this is only the beginning. What are they really after? Just the seed? Or something worse?" Saris looked down at her glowing forearms, the light pulsing rhythmically. "They want to stop humanity from stepping into places they believe only they should enter." "Meaning?" She looked Ryan directly in the eyes. "They want to erase us before we outgrow their control." Ryan felt a familiar fire ignite in his chest. HFY pride, human stubbornness, human rage. It was in his blood, in the blood of every Terran explorer who had ever looked at a distant star and thought, "I will go there anyway." "They can try," he said. Saris looked at him with real respect this time, not the forced or polite kind, real, earned respect. "That is why I saved you," she said simply. "Humans like you are why we might survive." Ryan didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. Instead, he grabbed the bed's controls. "Your cycle is almost done. It's my turn." Saris nodded and slid off the bed slowly. Her movements were more stable now, but still careful. Ryan helped steady her. She didn't protest. When he lay down on the bed, the regeneration field activated again. A warm wave spread across his injured ribs and bruised limbs. The pain dulled almost instantly. Saris leaned against the wall, watching the door carefully. Her posture was alert again, military-focused. Even weakened, she was ready to fight if needed. "Saris," Ryan said without opening his eyes, "if they board the ship, can you fight?" "Yes," she said, "but I won't be at full strength." "Will you be strong enough?" Saris took a long breath. "Strong enough to buy time." Ryan opened his eyes. "For us?" "For humanity." Before Ryan could answer, the ship shook with a violent force that knocked a tray of medical instruments onto the floor. The lights blinked wildly. Saris tensed. "They're here." Ryan sat up halfway. "How close?" Saris placed her hand on the wall again, closing her eyes. She seemed to feel the energy vibrations traveling through the ship's hull. "Too close," she whispered. Another alarm screamed through the corridors. "Enemy boarders detected near Deck 4. All security teams move to defense positions." Ryan swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the protest of his healing ribs. Saris pushed away from the wall. "We need to move," she said urgently. "They can't reach the engine core. If they do, the ship is finished." Ryan grabbed the support rail and pulled himself up. "Then let's go." Saris stepped closer, steady but breathing slightly heavier. "Stay behind me. If anything happens—" Ryan cut her off. "We stay together. That's an order." Saris blinked, slowly, then nodded once. Together, they left the med bay. The corridor beyond was filled with flashing alarms, red lights, and the distant echoes of battle. and Ryan realized something important. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about humanity's future. And it began in the moment a vanguard walked into his room, naked, claimed his bed, and refused to die. Red emergency lights flashed like warning beacons, painting the metal walls in sharp pulses of color. The ship's engines groaned under the strain of the gravitational snare pulling at them from outside. And beneath all of that, Ryan Hale could hear the distant but unmistakable sound of combat, shouts, metallic impacts, and weapon fire echoing through the long corridors. Saris moved first, her steps fast and controlled, scanning every corner with the precision of a trained vanguard. Ryan followed close behind, leaning against the wall whenever the ship jolted. The regeneration field had eased much of his pain, but he wasn't fully recovered. His body reminded him of that with every breath. "How many boarders are we expecting?" Ryan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Saris didn't slow down. "If they sent a snare, then at least a full hunter squad." "Hunter squad?" Ryan frowned. "That's 10? 12, Saris corrected, plus support drones. Ryan exhaled sharply. "You're telling me 12 elite enemy soldiers are on this ship right now?" "Yes. And you think we can fight them?" Saris didn't answer immediately. She stopped at a corner, pressed her back against the wall, and peered around it. When she saw it was clear, she finally responded. "We won't fight them directly," she said. "We slow them down, redirect them, and stop them from reaching the engine core." "What if they reach you?" Ryan asked. Saris paused for a brief second, just enough to show he had hit a sensitive point. "If they reach me," she said quietly, "they will rip the quantum seed from my chest. I won't survive that." Ryan clenched his fists. "Then we don't let that happen." The next section of the corridor was filled with emergency smoke, thin and gray from the suppressant system. It made the light seem softer, hazier. As they moved through it, they hurried past wounded crew members leaning against walls, medbots assisting them. One young technician grabbed Ryan's arm as he passed. "They breached Deck 4, the technician gasped. "Security tried to hold them, but—" "It's all right," Ryan said firmly. "Get to safety. That's an order." The technician nodded shakily and moved toward a medbot. Ryan continued forward, his jaw tense. Saris noticed. "Seeing civilians hurt affects you." Ryan didn't answer at first. He stepped over a fallen tool cart and kept walking. Finally, he said, "They're my crew, my responsibility." Saris studied him quietly. "You carry much on your shoulders." "Someone has to." Another tremor shook the ship, harder than the ones before. Metal groaned, and sparks shot from an open panel above them. "That was the snare pulling harder," Saris said. "They're trying to hold us in place for extraction." "Extraction of you," Ryan muttered. Saris didn't deny it. They reached a junction where two corridors crossed. There, Ryan stopped abruptly, because in the center of the junction lay the remains of two combat drones. Terran drones, not enemy ones. Their bodies were torn apart, wires and metal scattered like broken bones, and next to them, scorch marks lined the walls in strange patterns, almost like claw marks burned into the metal. "What did this?" Ryan whispered. Saris stepped closer and knelt beside a drone's ruined core. When she touched the surface, faint energy residue lit up in a pattern. "Infrasound disruption blades," she said. "Non-human tech." Ryan felt his stomach twist. "So the enemy boarders are not just soldiers, but enhanced killers." "Yes," Saris said. "Hunters, faster and stronger than normal soldiers. Built for one purpose, capturing seated vanguards." Ryan looked down the corridor. The smoke shifted as if moved by something, or someone. "How far ahead are they?" he asked. "Close," Saris replied. "Too close." They moved again, faster this time. The ship groaned under another gravitational surge, and one of the overhead lights shattered, sprinkling glass-like shards onto the floor. "This ship won't survive long like this," Rian said. "Which is exactly why we need to stop them now," Saris answered. They reached a sealed blast door. The lights around the frame flickered, showing signs of forced access. Saris placed her hand over the panel. "They cut through here." Ryan tensed. "Then they're already inside engineering range." "Not yet," Saris said. "This is the access route to the lower decks. They'll take the path leading toward the reactor core." Ryan drew a breath. "So we cut them off." Saris nodded. "Yes, but you must stay behind me. You're not fully healed." "I can still fight," Ryan said. "You can survive," Saris corrected. "Let me worry about fighting." Ryan wanted to argue, but there was no time. The blast door hissed open. They stepped through, and there the enemy waited. 3 hunters stood in the wide corridor ahead. Their tall, skeletal frames were encased in dark armor that shimmered with shifting patterns. Their faces were hidden behind narrow masks with glowing red slits for eyes. Each held a long weapon with curved blades humming softly at the edges. When they saw Saris, all 3 tilted their heads slightly, as if in recognition. Ryan felt the air grow colder. One hunter stepped forward, pointing its blade at Saris. Its voice was deep, distorted, and unsettlingly calm. "Seedbearer," it said. "You will come with us." Saris didn't move. "No." "Resistance is unwise," the hunter said. "We require your core intact." "You're not getting it," Saris replied. Ryan stepped to her side. "You'll have to go through both of us." The hunter paused, then spoke again. "Accepted." The 3 hunters charged. Saris moved like lightning. In one smooth motion, she shoved Ryan behind her and met the first hunter head-on. Her stabilizer patches lit up as she unleashed a strike that cracked through the enemy's armor. The hunter staggered, surprised by her strength. The second hunter swung its blade in an arc toward her head. Saris ducked, grabbed the hunter's arm, and twisted with brutal precision. The weapon flew from its grasp and clattered across the floor. Ryan didn't stand idle. He rushed toward the disarmed blade, grabbed it, and swung it upward at the third hunter, trying to flank Saris. The weapon vibrated in his hands, heavier than he expected, but he managed to block the incoming strike. Sparks burst between the weapons as metal met metal. The hunter pressed forward. Ryan gritted his teeth, muscles straining, ribs screaming, but he held his ground. Saris struck again, her fists glowing faintly with kinetic energy. She slammed her elbow into the chest of the second hunter, sending it crashing into the wall hard enough to dent the metal. The first hunter recovered and lunged at her. Saris spun, kicked upward, and struck its mask. The red slit flickered, and the hunter fell backward. The third hunter shoved Ryan aside with terrifying force. He hit the wall, breath knocked out of him. Ryan gasped for air. The hunter lifted its blade, but Saris appeared between them in a blur. She caught the blade with her bare hand. The metal hissed, her skin glowed brighter, but she didn't let go. "You made a mistake," she said quietly. She twisted the blade free and slammed it down on the hunter's shoulder, breaking its armor. Then she drove her knee into its chest, sending it sprawling. Within seconds, all 3 hunters were on the floor. 2 unconscious, 1 heavily damaged. Ryan struggled to his feet. "You're still injured. You shouldn't push yourself like that." Saris shook her head, breathing heavily. "I don't have a choice." "Saris, we need to keep moving," she said, cutting him off. "More will come, and they'll be stronger." Ryan looked at the fallen hunters, then at the long corridor stretching toward the engine core. "Then let's finish this." Saris nodded. Together they stepped over the defeated hunters and moved forward. The ship trembled again. The war had only just begun. The corridor ahead felt endless, long metal walls, flickering lights, and the deep hum of the reactor somewhere below. Every step Ryan, Hale, and Saris took echoed through the ship like a warning. The air smelled of heated metal and burned circuits. Somewhere behind them, the fallen hunters lay silent. Somewhere ahead, more were coming. Saris moved quickly but carefully, her eyes scanning every shadow. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed steadily now, stronger than before but still fragile. The regeneration cycle had helped her, but her body was far from stable. Ryan kept close, his breath heavy, but his mind sharp. His ribs still ached, but fear and adrenaline pushed him forward. "We're getting close to the core," Saris said quietly. "How do you know?" Ryan asked. She tapped the side of her neck where a faint line of blue light flickered. "Seed sense. It reacts to strong energy sources." "Useful," Ryan muttered. Saris allowed a small smile. "Most of the time." They reached a set of wide metal doors, the entrance to the reactor control center. A red light blinked above the frame. "Lockdown active." Ryan frowned. "The hunters triggered security." "No," Saris said. "This lockdown is manual." Ryan hesitated. "From our side or theirs?" "Only a human can activate it." "Then who?" Before they could continue, the door slid open a few centimeters, and a familiar voice called out, "Commander, over here!" It was Lieutenant Mara, one of the ship's engineers. Her uniform was torn and soot streaked her face, but she looked alive and alert. She pulled the door open wider, enough for Ryan and Saris to slip inside. The room was dim. Consoles flickered, showing red warnings across multiple screens. 2 other engineers were at work trying to stabilize power. Mara ran to Ryan and hugged him tightly before stepping back in embarrassment. "Sir, we thought you were dead." Ryan managed a tired smile. "Not yet." Her eyes moved to Saris. "And this is the one they're after?" Saris nodded politely. "Saris. Vanguard." Mara stared at her for a second, then turned to Ryan. "Sir, we have a problem." "When don't we?" Ryan muttered. Mara pointed at the main reactor display. A large pulse of red energy flashed across the screen. "The gravitational snare outside is forcing the reactor to overload. If the hunters reach the core, they can shut down our failsafe system and take control." Ryan looked at Saris. What would happen if they took control? Saris didn't hesitate. They could force the reactor to collapse inward. It would create a microfold breach. "Meaning we all die?" Mara asked nervously. "Meaning the entire ship disappears from existence," Saris said simply. The room went silent. A sudden metallic clang echoed from outside the control center. Then another. Then a third. The hunters were coming. One of the engineers turned pale. "Commander, how many more are out there?" "More than enough," Ryan answered. Saris stepped forward, placing her hand on the central control panel. Her glowing lines brightened as she focused. "The core is borderline unstable. If the hunters breach the doors, they'll reach me before I can stabilize the seed." "So we protect you," Ryan said firmly. Saris shook her head. "No, there's something else." She turned to face him fully. "The seed can create a controlled microfold burst, a small one, just enough to knock the hunters back and disrupt their tracking." Ryan blinked. "How small is small?" "Small enough not to destroy the ship," she replied, "but strong enough to push the hunters off and break the snare." Mara frowned. "So, why haven't you done it already?" Saris looked away. "Because using the seed that way will damage my core. Badly." Ryan's voice softened. "How badly?" "Enough that I won't recover without a full Vanguard regeneration chamber," she said. "And this ship doesn't have one." Ryan didn't answer immediately. He understood the meaning behind her words. If she used the burst, she would die. "No," Ryan said finally. "We find another way." "There is no other way," Saris replied calmly. "If the hunters break in, They'll take the seed. If they take the seed, humanity loses everything. Mara's voice shook. Isn't there a safe option? Sarah shook her head. Not anymore. The metallic clangs on the door grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling. The hunters were close. Ryan stepped in front of Saris. You are not sacrificing yourself. Not while I'm standing. Saris looked at him gently, almost sadly. Commander Hale, I saved you once already. Let me save the rest of the ship too. You're not dying, Ryan insisted. Not after everything we've been through. Her expression softened. Humanity survives because we adapt, because we choose the hard path when needed. The door buckled inward. A long clawed blade pierced through the metal. Mara screamed. They're breaking through! Ryan grabbed one of the emergency rifles from the wall. He held it tightly, breathing hard. Saris placed a hand on his arm. Thank you for trying. That simple sentence hit him harder than any blow. He turned to face her. Saris, please. But she just smiled, confident, calm, brave, the same expression she had when she walked into his room for the first time. I claimed your bed, she said. Now I claim my choice. Then she stepped toward the reactor. The hunters burst through the doors. Ryan fired immediately, hitting one in the chest. Mara and the engineers took cover behind consoles. Glass shattered as projectiles hit equipment. The room shook with the force of the breach. Saris reached the core panel and placed both hands onto it. Her skin glowed brighter, the light in her veins turning almost white. One hunter rushed toward her. Ryan jumped in front of Saris and shot the creature point blank before it reached her. The recoil tore through his ribcage, but he didn't care. More hunters poured in. Saris closed her eyes. Ryan, she said softly. He turned. Thank you, she whispered. And then, her core ignited. A brilliant burst of energy exploded outward, white and blue. Bright as a star, the shock waves slammed into the hunters, throwing them backward through the doorway and into the corridor. The gravitational snare outside shattered. The entire ship shook violently as the microfold burst ripped away the enemy's lock and flung their forces into subspace. The light filled the entire control room. Ryan shielded his eyes. Then, slowly, the light faded. When he looked up, Saris was collapsing. He caught her before she hit the ground. Her glowing lines were dim, faint, barely visible, but she was still alive. Saris, Ryan whispered, shaking her gently. Stay with me. She opened her eyes just slightly. Did it work? Ryan nodded, voice cracking. Yes, you saved all of us. She gave him a tired smile. Good. Help her, Ryan shouted to the engineers. Now! Mara rushed over with a med kit, scanning Saris's vitals. Her expression turned grim. Her core, it's failing. She needs a proper regeneration chamber. We'll get her one, Ryan said firmly. Commander? Mara hesitated. The nearest Vanguard facility is months away. Ryan met her eyes with iron resolve. Then we'll go faster. He lifted Saris carefully, cradling her as alarms faded and the ship stabilized around them. She opened her eyes one last time, whisper soft. Ryan, I'm here. You humans, she breathed, never give up. And for the first time, her voice carried something deeper than pride or duty. It carried trust. Ryan nodded, holding her close. Humanity doesn't leave its own behind. The ship drifted free of the snare, engines powering back to life. The hunters were gone. The threat had passed, but the war had just begun. Commander Ryan Hale looked at the silent corridor ahead and then at Saris in his arms. No matter how far he had to go, no matter what enemies he faced, he would find a way to save her. Because she had claimed his bed. Because she had saved his life. Because she had saved humanity. And because humans never stop fighting for their own.